I guess you're all waiting for the grand introduction from Ninth Wonder.
Yeah, when's he coming into the speaker?
So the bad news is, due to the weather outside, his flight was canceled and he was not able to join us here in person tonight, but he will be calling in real time and joining us for the conversation, so we'll be able to ask him some questions and go through this whole process. So now we'll get into the creative process. Obviously, we're here with Native Instruments and in this Red Bull space, so creativity is a large part of the conversation that we're gonna have here. Yeah. Creativity, innovation, technology, how all of these things tie together. So we're gonna go way back to the beginning.
All right.
Tell me about the first song you've ever written.
Speaking of hustling, like you have to buy all this technology. And when I was growing up, I wanted a bass. So the very first thing I had was a bass that my brother's friend left over, and my dad had a Rhodes, and I had saved up enough to get a 4-track cassette recorder. And so the first song I ever wrote was just on Rhodes and had bass in it. That was it. Yeah.
Lyrics.
I don't think my father was a jazz head. The first music I guess conceived for myself, I always thought I'd be an improvisational artist, like a jazz artist. So I don't think it had lyrics. Yeah.
All right, you get away with that one.
Yeah, I only sing out of necessity. I used to want people to come sing on my demos, and they never show up, so I just would do it myself. So,
wow, flaky friends paid off.
Yes.
Yes. Shout out to the flaky friends when you guys watch this. Look what you did. Thank you. All right. So your earlier records had a bit more technology and more production in them. And then as your career advanced, you kind of stripped that back a little bit. Was that influenced by the people that you were collaborating with, or just like an oversaturation? What caused that?
Everything's in hindsight, so I can't say what the exact impetus was. But I grew up in D.C., and go-go music was this very vibrant live music with real people playing and just a collective of, like, you had these 10 guys who were concentrating on one thing, and this amazing thing sprouted from that. So I think when I first got signed, I just played everything, and that was just the only way to do it, was to sit there and be meticulous and make the beat and do all the programming. It's just a way of thinking, a concept. But then I made a record with this guy named John Mellencamp, and it got me. It was the first time I had an experience where it's like, hey, we're all just gonna get in the room and play. And I was like, wow, I missed that. And so I started in that zone, and I really love Brian Eno, and I feel that that's like a great mixture of, like, you can have real musicians and do all that meticulous programming and production, but it still has a human feeling to it. So I think I'm into the collective of making music. It's become such like, I sit in front of my laptop, it's so myopic, and I mean, I love it, but there's something you can't explain when you make things with other people.
So I think that you kind of answered my next question. Was, do you feel like technology has provided you new outlets and has grown your ways of expression, or has it hindered the way that, getting everybody in a room and just feeling that vibe and that groove and moving off of that?
Well, no, I love technology. I think it makes me isolate more. Actually, I'm much more content. I no longer have this, but maybe that's time. I don't have this desire to be heard.
Because she's a Virgo.
I have yeah, I'm really okay. Like, sadly, I either go to one extreme or the other. I like that I can be alone and just have my own world. So I really appreciate it for that. And, so I appreciate technology, but it is something you can't explain when you make something with other people.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that kind of segues again into the next one about your creative process. And I'm sure it's changed since you explained like first doing this and feeling like you didn't need the vocals and all of that stuff. But Meshell, we say today you need to go write a song and produce a track. What do you need to get you in the zone, and what takes you from conception to final product?
Depends who it's for. If you're scoring a TV show, it has nothing to do with your wants or needs. You have to find the colors that that person is looking for and that instrumentation. So sometimes that is just sitting with the scene and having your laptop and your keyboard, and you literally just sit there and work things out. If it's an artist and they want to do a writing session, I have to figure out, is it the sort of recording that I can get away with playing the keyboard part as we write? Or do you go say, I'm going to get my friend because he's killing and he has lots of good ideas, and you just collectively do it? Or then you have some things where it's like, I just got a tune from Pat Metheny, and it's really strange and really complex. And so you just sit there, and he's like, "Can you put words to the melody?" And you literally, I literally put on headphones and walk until I can't walk anymore, or I sit and I cook, and you just have to listen to something over and over again. If I'm in the mode of like, I think I want to make a record. Unlike when I first started, when you first start, you have all this creative energy and you're dying to be heard and listen to me, and you're feeling all confident. And you're just like, it's just pouring out. And and I'm sort of a spiritual person, so I just wait for the transmission. So sometimes it's just like I just wait to hear it, or sometimes you're just like you just have to sit in a room and you just bang out changes, and it's boring. But you just sit there and you bang out changes. It's like there's no recipe or no right way, It's literally I wait for the transmission.
What if you're up against a deadline and this is me thinking about writer's block. You're up against a deadline and those juices just aren't coming.
Well, I do feel certain music, like R&B and pop music, especially, or people like the melody, the words, and the beat. And so if I know it's something, it's a deadline and it's in that genre, you just work with those elements and you try to get those as strong as you can, and then you fill in the colors.
So your name is attached to two big players. You have Madonna on one spectrum, and then now you have Oprah on another spectrum. Like your career has done like a full. We're all in here like Madonna and Oprah. All right. Yeah. So we'll start with Madonna, and we'll do this in chronological order. But so there's a story that we were talking about backstage that includes Madonna like dropping a Tupac verse from her album because he got arrested and calling you up to be the person on that track. Tell the audience that. Okay. Tell the audience the story, but don't discount yourself for Tupac's arrest.
But I think I tell you, I think it's more than that. I think sometimes people's relationships change. And you no longer want that person, and then you find someone that's close enough to fill in that blank. It's just luck. I teach at Berkeley sometimes. I did, but I really didn't enjoy it. But there's this because there's a conversation I feel people don't want to have, and I'm not. Forgive me if I digress, because to me the meaning of the story is, if you want to be a virtuosic musician that gets a lot of gigs, you have to sit and practice and be by yourself several hours a day. If you want to be a star, there is no guarantee, but there is a path to that as well. It's about appearance. It's about public relations. It's about spin. It's about writing songs that fit in a certain way, that are commercial. I love that book, The Hit Factory. It was eye-opening to me. And so there is a path for that. But it all comes down to, as the French say, bon chance. Everything is just luck, being at the right place at the right time. I was going to say it, Freudian slip. I was just at the right place at the wrong time. And I think she just chose me because I was an artist on her roster. Totally worked out, gave it a different vibe, you know. And that's how things work. You're lucky, things happen, you know.
I want to touch on two things.
Yeah.
First, on the concept of luck.
Yeah.
And second, on the two paths, pop stardom and then being.
And there are other paths in between as well.
But I feel like in your career, you've teetered between both. You've seen large mass scale fame, and then you've also been brave enough to say, no, fuck it. Can I curse on this? Sorry. You've also been brave enough to say, no, F it.
Yeah.
This is how I'm going to create.
Yeah.
And you've been authentic to self throughout that process. So you're a rare case study, but let's
I think I did a lot of that unconsciously. Like I said, hindsight. Unlike, we're not dinosaurs. We're very conscious about the end is coming. We're very conscious at looking at the trajectory and the legacy of other people. So I think when I was in it, there were choices that I just couldn't make. And then I think there was a spirit in me that's like, I made a record 20 years ago on a topic that was like racy and kind of sexy and funny. And people still expect me to play that song, even though I'm a different person in a different, costume, because it's all a costume. And that's just something I'm not interested in. I try to live in the present, and in order to be famous, you have to be okay with constantly regurgitating the same self that people like of you. And I wasn't really good at that. And because there's so much, like I said, I'm curious, there's so much to hear. It's like I'm okay that I like Barbra Streisand and A$AP Ferg. I'm okay with that. And that's the kind of person I am. And I'm going to go enjoy all that and have that fluidity. And I think also it's a choice about your well-being. Again, about the dinosaurs. I used to ask myself this question: what artist, what person of color especially, has had a career where they're not either dead, on drugs, or lose all that they have?
Does anybody have the answer to that? No. But on her own terms.
But I've other things I don't have. But that's an interesting question.
Right.
Or look at Walter Becker. They're just like, if you look at people, you can see what happens, and so you just start to eventually make choices that aren't future projecting, but you're very much in the present. You what will you give up? What is it that you need to make you feel successful? And that's different to different people. And when you back then you used to get a record deal, you had 10 other people who you made money for, and they would tell you what was important to you. And I think there's great freedom now. If you want to be heard, you can be heard.
Right.
And that's a gift.
That was beautiful.
Are you making fun of me?
No, I wasn't expecting us to go there already, but that was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I want to touch back on the concept of luck that you brought up.
Yeah.
Luck versus hard work. Do you think that there can be payoff with just luck, with no hard work?
No, of course not. That's not mathematically possible. But you can have luck, and it's fleeting. There are people who become an internet meme, and that might be it.
Meme rap.
No matter how hard they work.
That's a good point.
That's it. Yeah.
So we spoke about Madonna, and now I'm going to bring it back to Oprah, Auntie Oprah. Yeah. So you're scoring Queen Sugar, and you bring in your own band. You work with Knee Complete. You use them as a resource in some ways to kind of like help you out. I know we spoke about like the process and all of the other levels, like making music for TV and how that changes the process. And I think it was super interesting. And if you would share it here, I think that'd be good.
When you score someone's show, you are there to make the director's visual images come alive. It has nothing to do with you. And that took me a minute to get. It has nothing to do with how musical I can be or how interesting I can be. Because I could come up with something really interesting, yet you can't hear any of the dialogue. And they're just like, I can't use that.
Right.
And so after a while, you create a rapport where you're okay. I'm more felt than I'm heard. If you take the score out, you would definitely miss it, but at the same time, you don't want it to distract you. And so I'm learning that. I'm learning how to do that, and it's also you're creating by committee. Like producer A may like it, but the director doesn't. The network may hate it, but the director likes it, and so you're constantly balancing how to make it work for everyone involved. And it becomes very selfless. And I think that's what's interesting about where I am in my career now. Like I said, when you're young, I don't believe that youth knows less and that older people know more. That is like the biggest, like, that one will take you down. That one will ruin your life. Because I guarantee I have young people around me who school me on things that I feel ashamed that I don't know. I don't do this so that it's not a competition. If I used to want to be a painter or I thought I'd be an athlete, and because it's competitive, and music is such a spiritual thing. It's a fellowship, and I try to maintain that. I think women have made great strides. Mm-hmm. I think this is gonna sound. I just wish this wouldn't be re-recorded but I really do feel this. There's something about being female that's beautiful, and it is because we can have mic number 2. It's like I don't do this so I can be number 1, and that's a great goal to have. Or I do this because I love it. I want to be a nurturing person. I want to give people something that they may not know they wanted. And I feel those strides are made. And I just think it's like, let those thoughts go out of your mind. It's not a competition. And it's their loss. It's people's loss if they discriminate against you because of your gender or any other reasons. But I just feel like in my meditation practice, I'm realizing, like, those are other people's thoughts. My mind is a garden. I'm very careful what I plant in it.
Thank you. Who are you, and why do you do what you do?
For me, I've always wanted to be a part of what I've always loved, and that was hip hop for me. I wanted to, get a better understanding of it, get a better, sense of what I was doing, what I was listening to, whether it been from Public Enemy. I'm a child of the 80s, was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. I was in band in middle school and high school, and, playing clarinet by day and playing Public Enemy at night was a weird mix for me. And, I always wanted to know exactly what I was getting into and know exactly what I was a part of or listening to every day. And so I wanted to be an active part of it. First, I was a fan, and I'm still a fan, but I wanted to be an active part. So when it got to the late 90s, when I started to go to be an active part of it, to learn how to make beats, to take all of the stuff I learned from band and orchestra and all of this, music theory stuff, and to put it into making beats. The next level was, okay, well, people are telling me I'm actually good at this. Why won't I rethink the idea of going to school and getting a degree and getting a job that way? Why not make something that I love my job? And, the first person that paid me money decided to pay me money before they decided to eat with their own money, told me that I had a chance, that, this person would rather give me their $80. They can spend this $80 on groceries, but they rather give me the money for something I sat down at a computer and did. And I thought that, well, if it's one of you got 5 friends they got friends. This thing can be a worldwide situation. Like 15 of you, can't be crazy. Your 30 friends can't be crazy. I must have something that's worth something. So, and then once I got past that, now that I've learned it, now that I was a fan, now that I've learned it, now that I've made it my profession, now how can I now express how I feel about it to people who might not know about what hip hop is, or give people a deeper understanding of what they listen to that we grew up listening to together? Because I've had conversations all the time with people my age that I grew up, we listened to the same De La Soul records and the same Tribe records and the same NWA records. But now, since I've made this my field of study now, I can tell them stuff that they probably never realized when we listened to like Day Live 14. And so that's when the teaching aspect came in, and I thought, well, hey, like this has now become my life's blood. So that's what it is. I just wanted to find every way possible I could to get so in touch with the culture as I possibly could, because it gave me so much. So I wanted to give something back. So that's what it was.
Awesome. And Meshell wants to know about the first beat you made.
It was whack, girl. Listen, it was so whack. And it was whack, man. Like, it was terrible. That's all I can remember. I made 4 beats.
On what? On what technology?
I made it was Cool Edit and a program called Hammer. This was 1998, and I made the beats, and you know, this is during the Raucous era, with Mos and Kweli and Pharoah Monch. You know, although the radio might have sounded a certain way, Raucous gave us the life to say, hey, we can still be a part of this, whatever this is. So I tried to, you know, make beats that felt like that most would like, or Kweli would like, or anybody I was, you know, liking at the time from that particular conglomerate. And they were terrible. And so I stepped away from it, and then I came back in like early 1999, like spring of 1999, and I tried it again, and I actually made something I liked. And so I was still using Cool Edit and Hammer, which Cool Edit is now known as Adobe Audition. And then I started using Cool Edit and Beatbox. It was another archaic program. And then I left that and went to Fruity Loops, and that was it for me.
So you're going to upload that track on Twitter after this discussion is over, right?
I am not. Off that track.
So this segues into our next question, which is for both. Meshell can answer first, and then Ninth, you can take it after. Is what role does technology play in your artistry, and how has new tech evolved and or devolved your process?
Thanks to Carmen, I have a really killer Native Instruments package. I mean, I have everything. Everything. And I can definitely write and arrange in an orchestral style. And I think technology has allowed me to present that in a way where it does sound imitating, but I'm getting to the point where I can do it and you can't tell. And it allows me to show people that I can score in an orchestral fashion. And technology also helps me, it writes it out, or I can arrange it and deal with it in a way, since I'm not a trained musician. And so technology has allowed me to show people, like, I can't do it like you, but I can hear it, I can do it, you know, and so it allows me that.
Ninth, same question for you. What role does technology play in your artistry, and how has new tech evolved or devolved your creative process?
You know, those old beat machines from the 90s is heavy as hell. Like, if you ever carried around an MPC 3000 or something like that, like, a lot of these old machines are like super heavy. Like you know, Crisis will tell you, like, the ASR 10 that we have in our studio is like a casket. Like, we have to take 2 people to move it, right? So, you know, for me, you know, with machine, it was the best of both worlds for me. Like, I was used to making beats on the computer, but when I started using the MP, I liked pads. So machine gave me the capability to see what I'm doing, but still have the feel of the past. And that was kind of the best of both worlds. But, I think that sometimes the downside of technology is, the convenience of some of these particular, these devices that Native Instruments make, the convenience are still are supposed to be left to the experts. Like, you have to know still about music. It's convenient for you because of this Native Instruments have made things convenient for us to move around with, to make things on the plane with that. You don't have to carry this, and that everywhere to make music, but at the same time, you still have to know music and know what you're doing. Like, it's not, I'm just gonna get a beat machine and just start making beats next week. Nah, that's not how this works. And so, I think the downside a lot has been, a lot of technology has made it seem like it's easy to do until you try to do it. And so, that's what it is. That's both sides of it for me, I guess.
I would say the downside is not this technology, but Pro Tools and digital recording. People can't play through a whole track anymore. Cannot do it. Everything's freaking like the comeback things. And then I think the downside of it is, and this is not to be corny, is like that. Why am I on the plane making beats? Like, no, you don't ever take a break.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes I'm like, just put it in the bag and stop doing it, like, for a while.
So the overall consensus here about smartphone producers is a no.
You know me, I'm not a smartphone person.
So anybody making beats solely on, oh my, hold it up. Hold it up for the people.
Yeah.
Ninth, she has a flip phone. But she placed it on top of her iPad, so.
Right.
Connected but
and
not.
a book. Yeah, it's a
And a
book.
book.
It's just got a lot of books in
This
the
is a good
iPad.
representation of who you are.
I have a lot of books in the iPad.
So next question is going to be for Ninth. We went through Meshell's history with Madonna and Oprah. And Ninth, I want to ask you about Young Guru. And obviously, you guys have a strong starting relationship. And I want to know about the lessons that you've learned from him that you feel helped hone your craft and that you still carry with you today. Like I'm sure you've learned a lot throughout all these years that you've been doing this, but what is the one thing that you learned from your interactions with Guru that you carry with you?
I've known Guru for 14 years now. I met him during the making of the Black Album when I first got on the Black Album, and Young Guru arguably was like the first expert I met in hip hop. I mean, I might have listened to experts over the years. I might have listened to expert musicians over the years. He's the first expert that I had a chance to sit down and talk to, because he was an expert in sound when it came to mixing and frequency and all of this stuff. Like, he believes in being an expert, and he believes in knowing everything about the subject. Now he's into photography. So, he has Leicas, like different Leica cameras, and he just believes in honing a craft and becoming and knowing everything you possibly can about the craft that he's in. And also knowing the history of and what came before you, when it comes to his craft, which is engineering. His predecessor is Bob Power, right? And it's like he just knows everything about Bob Power and everything he can tell you about Bob Power, and he will sit and listen to Bob Power for hours. He really understands and really gets the idea of being an expert and knowing your craft. And that's the number one thing I learned from him, is like, understand and know the craft that you are in and take it very, very seriously. That's the number one thing I learned from Google.
And what do you learn from your students?
Oh, God. I've been teaching for about 10 years now. And, one of the things students have taught me is the word empathy. And empathy when it comes to sound. I might not like the music they like, but I have a better understanding why they like it. And I think that's hard for, us, quote unquote, the older generation of hip hop and music. Like, it's hard for us to understand why this 18-year-old kid would like this, that we listen to him like, what are you hearing? Like, what is it? And, my students, having conversations with them about why they like it. They just don't like it just to like it. Like, it comes from years of training their ear to a certain sound to make them like what they like. It's not just, I just woke up liking this. It's because I've listened to this first, and then I listened to this first, and then I listened to this, and then I listened to this, and now this is the sound now. And if you trace my listening all the way back, you'll understand why I like what I like. And I think that's where we missed the mark. A lot of my students, they were in middle school and elementary school during the Soulja Boy year, like during, when Soulja Boy first started. So you have to understand, if that's your first like taste of music for yourself, that's going to pattern how you listen to music from now on. And I had to understand and learn that, to say, yeah, you're not going to get something from the 90s that way unless somebody that you think is cool reintroduces it for you. And I had to really understand that and say, I might not like this artist, but I understand why you do, as a 17 and 18-year-old kid. And that's not encompassing of all 18 and 17-year-old kids, because some 17, 18-year-old kids like soul. So, but from the students that I have, I get why they like what they like, and I've learned to empathize with that.
Right. And Meshell, I want you to add to that, because you were talking a little bit earlier about surrounding yourself with young people. And sorry, go ahead, Nine. You're talking about surrounding yourself with young people and how you learn from them, and I just want you to elaborate on what he's speaking about a little bit more.
Because you got to remember, you were once that person. And that you are that person to someone else. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You live on this thing. You are, sometimes you're the teacher, sometimes you're the student. And if you forget that, it's just like you become dogmatic and strange. And it's funny, I forgot, the thing we have most in common is Bob Power is also my mentor. He's mixed my first two records, both nominated for mixing credits, and like he is someone who's responsible for my success and also my ability to listen and to sonically shape things and have an understanding about how I can make the bass sound as if it's booming out of the room, but it's not. It's like, this is the person's like, hone your craft, learn how to make things sound like you hear in your head. So he was an older person that told me, just don't be dogmatic. Everybody's coming with something, and it's all about empathy and also creating a context. Like he says about the Soulja Boy, or you're listening to something, you don't get it, but you got to give it context so that another person can be open to at least being curious to why you may like something or why you think that's good or bad. The other thing that I had a problem with at Berkeley was it's hard to talk to people who just say, I don't like it. I don't like it. And I'm like, okay, tell me why, Or people don't dialogue about music anymore. People aren't articulate about structure or, the sonics of it. And then that just becomes, like you can see in our political climate, like nobody can talk, no one knows how to disagree or debate or just sort of like have an exchange about stuff that's going on. And that frightens me because it's just no fun. It's just, it's like, and it's funny, I find it to be a male thing in the sense that, like, I really like men who are like, know their thing and can tell you why. It's not just their bravado that makes their point. It's not just their like presence. It's like they can articulate their emotions and their thoughts. And I'm like, that's a beautiful thing. And that's one of the reasons I'm a hip hop head, because it was something so beautiful to me that these people could express themselves in a certain way and had a bravado that had intellect. And I do miss that.
We're gonna sign you up for the OK Player message boards, and you could just be in there going at it all day. So, Ninth, I mean, I love how this conversation is just flowing and going into. I have these questions here, and for some reason they keep coming around back to them. So, you talked about like empathy. At one point, what you were doing with sampling was kind of new. What are some of the stigmas that you feel are still attached to sampling, and how do you work to kind of scrub that clear?
I mean, the same stigmas that's attached to sampling is all of the same stigmas that's attached to hip hop. You know, that it is that it's not music that we're stealing, that is juvenile, that it's garbage, that is, you know, all of these things. You know, when I first started teaching, I had to understand and to be able to translate to non-creatives. Like, it's kind of what Michelle was talking about. Like, you know, I've studied under Henry Louis Gates at Harvard, and to be able to articulate that is called double consciousness. That's what it's called. To have to do a thing, to be, you know, to be artistic, to do a thing, and to be able to step outside yourself and comment on the thing that you're doing. It's called double consciousness. And I had to learn that when it came to teach, and to be able to translate what I'm doing and why I do what I do to a room full of people who can give a damn about hip hop music. Why do I do what I do? And, you know, those are some of the stigmas that are attached to that we're stealing. But my comeback was, well, me sampling a record from the 1970s is the same thing as you. You are now a PhD in education, and everything you've learned as a PhD, you internally sampled it from a professor before you, but you turned it around and remixed it into something else to teach somebody else. Isn't that the same thing? And the PhD looked at me and said, yeah, it's the same thing. You just reinvented something somebody else taught you and introduced it to a new generation. That's the Iliad and the Odyssey. Same book, it's just remixed. So that's what I had to translate it in that form for people to give it some type of, if you will, genius. I had to explain to people why sampling was genius. What was so genius about taking a record? Well, the genius thing about it was if a song is 7 minutes, you have to find the infectious part of a song that's 7 minutes long that the rest of the world is going to like. Try doing that every day. That's tough. Like, and on top of that, you have to hear it a certain way or manipulate it a certain way or do the thing of taking something, rearranging something, and putting it into a chord progression where a bass player can come along and play what you chopped, and it makes sense to that bass player. That's not easy to do. So I had to explain it that way, sampling that way to people, to make them look back at me and say, what you do is genius. And it's not just stealing.
That was beautiful. And I think that was the perfect way to wrap this up. Ninth, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Meshell, thank you so much.
You.
This was beautiful. My new bestie. And thank all of you guys. Go back upstairs. Go try out new things.